Good evening and welcome to our COVID-19 special program. I'm Neota Igwe. Here are the highlights of this hour. Authorities in Gombe State government raised concern about the community transmission. Kaduna State opens worship centers while markets and schools remain shut. As global cases pass 7 million, World Health Organization warns that the pandemic is far from over. We start tonight from Kaduna State, where Governor Nasir El-Rufai has announced that supermarkets, hotels, providers of personal services such as hairdressing and barbing salons can reopen for tomorrow, Wednesday, the 10th of June. According to Governor El-Rufai, businesses must provide thermometers for temperature checks, sanitizers for hand washing equipment, and physical distancing measures must be in place within all facilities. Working hours will be from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. daily. Worship centers can also open subject to compliance with the safety stipulations in the guidelines. He, however, said it is still considered unsafe for markets and schools to reopen.
Restriction of intrastate movement is lifted, subject to a nighttime curfew of 8 p.m. to 5 a.m. Number 2, businesses can reopen, subject to the provision of thermometers for temperature checks, sanitizers or hand washing equipment, and physical distancing measures within all facilities. Working hours will be from 9 a.m. in the morning to 3 p.m. in the afternoon. 3, church services are allowed only on Sundays, and mosques are allowed to conduct only Friday Jumu'at services for the time being, subject to compliance with the safety stipulations above. Number 3, transport operators must reduce capacity to not more than 2 passengers per row and not more than 50% of bus capacity. Supermarkets and providers of personal services such as hairdressing and barbing salons can reopen, subject to satisfying health protocols. Hotels can fully reopen, with their restaurants and bars offering only room service.
In Gombe State, the task force there is concerned about the rate of community transmission of the coronavirus within the state. The Commissioner for Information and Culture, Ibrahim Al-Hassan, said that community monitors in the state will liaise with the communities across Gombe to ensure proper contact tracing and testing. Within the last 4 days, 63 people in Gombe State have tested positive to COVID-19. Of these numbers, 5 were members of the State House of Assembly, 3 members of the State Executive Council. There's also a special advisor to the governor who's tested positive.
We need to engage the community because community participation is crucial in any pandemic, but more so in this one, which is the largest we have seen in our lifetime. Community engagement, cooperation, and involvement is a major goal that we must chase if we are to curtail the alarming spread of COVID-19 in the last week or so.
And while that's happening in Gombe State, the Delta State Task Force on COVID-19 has sealed relaxation centers for flouting the set protocols to check the spread of the virus. The Secretary to the Delta State government, Mr. Chiedu Ebie, says the sealed premises were crowded without any sign of physical distancing, while most of the guests were not wearing face masks. The Delta State has 115 confirmed cases, with a 2-month-old baby, one of them, confirmed over the weekend.
We got information that a lot of the hotels were actually running their bars and allowing people to come from members of the public to come and utilize and spend time there. It's not our duty, or it's not that we want to inconvenience people or shut down their businesses. All we're trying to do is to ensure that they comply with the directives. As you can see, we've spoken to them, we've explained to them the need for them to limit they limit the service that they provide to only their in-house guests and not to members of the public. For those of them that flouted the order or the directives, we sealed up some parts of their hotel. For those that we didn't have any problems with, we just had a chat with them. But our appeal to everybody is to please ensure that you take this matter very seriously.
And let's get to Abuja, where life appears to be coming back to normal in the nation's capital after the eased lockdown. But the question is, are the people still conscious of the COVID-19 pandemic and the guidelines set to ensure that they're able to go around their businesses? In our next report, our correspondent Kayla Megwa speaks with the Federal Capital Territory Task Force Chairman on compliance levels in the city and if the people are still sensitive to the rising numbers of infections and deaths from the virus in Nigeria.
Nigeria has seen a constant rise in cases and deaths from COVID-19 in the past 3 months. You would think this will make people more cautious, but it has not. The use of face masks in public has dropped drastically.
Initially, I wore it in the morning, but I can't breathe very well. So I think I have to just, when I went to the necessary place, I have to just put my face mask.
Many transporters have stopped observing social distancing in their cars, and the crowded bus stops are back.
I happen to be one of those people that will always complain, tell the drivers that the government said just 2. So why are you trying to still jam pack people?
Do we still care that there's a virus killing people out there with no cure?
We look at it critically. The area that I stayed, you realize that as big as the place is, you don't even know anybody that is suffering from COVID-19 or thereabout.
Me, I've not really seen anybody that has it. Somebody that is so close to me, or somebody that I can say somebody that is close to me have it. I've not seen such. So I wouldn't say there's COVID-19 or not.
If you go out and ask your friends, have you seen a neighbor or have you seen anybody in your place of work, maybe who has died, or maybe his friends or relatives has died of, they will say no.
Nigerians believe in what they see. So the government needs to come out and tell Nigerians, we have this number of cases. These are the locations.
The task force monitoring compliance in the FCT says there's a pattern to the compliance levels.
So for me, the compliance level is high, although in some parts of the interland, where they live in communal pattern and in organic settlement, they largely just felt it was a family affair, and there was not so much observance of health protocol as it was around the cities and satellite towns.
As regards the COVID-19 pandemic in Nigeria, the NCDC figures are over 79,000 samples tested, over 12,000 confirmed cases, over 8,000 active cases, over 4,000 discharged cases, and 361 casualties. The nation's capital has over 900 confirmed cases, over 600 patients on admission, over 200 have been discharged, and 23 people are dead from the disease. Nigeria may not be seeing the deaths recorded across the world, and there may be many reasons for this, one being that we're still not testing as many people as we should. Many believe they'll be more conscious of the disease if the government removes the veil of secrecy surrounding the identities and locations of those affected by COVID-19.
And now we're being joined by Kayla Megwa in our Abuja studio. Kayla, you've had this opportunity of meeting some of these people. I mean, off camera, what are the things, what did you sense from their conversations you had with them?
Good evening, Nelta. One of the major things that I noticed from talking with people about this disease, especially in the nation's capital, is that they still feel very detached from it. As you can see from the Vox Pops that we did there, a lot of people are still saying, I don't know anyone who has this disease. I don't know anyone who knows anyone who knows anyone who has this disease. So it doesn't feel real to them. And I think also we're seeing a lot of people a little upset about just the numbers that the NCDC reels out every day. It doesn't feel real. Some people actually think it's fake. They're just giving us numbers every day. So some of the people that we spoke to think, okay, if we remove the veil of secrecy, tell us where the locations are. Like if you're talking about the nation's capital, where if you say it's in Maitama, then people will be a little bit more conscious about going to Maitama. If you say there's a community spread in Mabushi, or there's a community spread somewhere in Kubwa or something, if they have that kind of information, they say that they will be more conscious of the disease. But right now it just feels very alien. There has to be more interaction, I guess. And I do understand the part of the government where they don't want to mention particular places because of things like stigma, you know. So there's a lot that needs to be worked on. It has to somehow become real to the people, especially in the FCT. It has to become real. They have to see that's actually happening. Otherwise, what we're going to see, Nelta, is that with time, people are just going to move on and pretend that this disease is not there, forgetting that there are many countries that have eased lockdowns and seen second waves of this disease, you know, and God forbid that happens here. But something needs to be done to make this thing more real and make everyone feel like they're part of the process of removing this pandemic from this country. Everyone has to feel like they belong to this. And I think something has to be done about that, Nelta.
What you said, I mean, from their thinking about the fact that it's just the numbers, they want to know the people, they want to hear their names, and they want to hear their location. But we've had on our platform several individuals who've recovered from this disease. Yesterday we had a lawyer who lives in Abuja, and he says he's going to take on that the task of telling people that this is real, you know. But does it really have to get to that point? I mean, thinking about it, do we have to know that this person was burnt by fire before you begin to be cautious, hearing that there's fire burning around that area? What do you think?
Personally, it doesn't have to get there. All I have to hear is that there's a pandemic somewhere and we have to protect ourselves and we do what's right. But, you know, we're talking about our country here, and a lot of people, like one of the ladies that we spoke to today, she said Nigerians believe what they see. If you might want to deny that, you know, you may want to say, oh no, but you know, you can learn from other people's experiences. But the truth is that the bulk of Nigerians believe what they see. If they don't see it, if it's not real to them, you're talking to yourself. So as much as we're doing all this awareness, there's a lot of talking going on. We're seeing people, we've had so many people on channels television who were healed from this disease, you know, who were able to beat it and they come and they give their experiences. We just had our correspondent in Kano in an isolation center in Kano, you know, to show people that this is real. It still doesn't feel real to a lot of people. They still keep feeling skeptical. And this, I think, Nelta, comes from years of not trusting government. So there's that at the back of the mind of many Nigerians, is that distrust for government. You know, they think, oh, there's a money-making venture somewhere here. You know, there's something about this. There's a lack of trust. And because of that, we might be exposing ourselves to more danger. But we'll see what happens in a few days, in the weeks to come. There's going to be more easing of lockdowns. They're talking about reopening schools. A lot of these conversations are coming up right now, putting guidelines in place for the reopening of our society, you know, to go back to living normal with this disease that has come to stay. You know, many people need to be a part of the process. Like I said earlier, if you feel detached from something, you wouldn't commit to its success. So if you feel like you're a part of the process, somehow you want to work together with government to make this work. But if we don't get that going, we're just going to have people waiting, marking time and waiting for this to blow over so that they can go back to their lives. They might even start to make fun of people who are wearing face masks very soon, you know, if we continue going this way. But we'll see what happens in the days to come, Nelta.
Let's hope that it doesn't get to that point, Kayla. We do hear the task force, I mean the federal task force, and even the state task force is talking about the fact that all of this that's happening is just for them to be able to observe, and given time, they might have to put back the restrictions that they are easing off from right now. But then, you stay safe as you continue to monitor the situation. Thank you, Kayla, for sharing your thoughts with us tonight. And let's go on to Imo State, where our correspondent Tokwe Kutei tells us or brings us up to date about what's going on in that neck of the wood. Tokwe.
Good evening. The number of coronavirus cases in Imo State has risen to 68, and according to the NCDC, 49 active cases, 19 discharged with no death. Even with the increasing figures, there's still low compliance to the precautionary measures put in place by the government to contain the spread of this virus. The COVID-19 task force in Imo State is worried about this trend, and according to them, their sensitization is now centered on debunking rumors making rounds in the state that there is no more coronavirus, which is one of the major reasons people might have thrown caution to the wind.
You know, many people are saying what we have in Imo State is malaria, not COVID-19. It is false. The issue is because we don't want to disclose the identity of some of the sufferers of COVID-19, because under the under the Information Act, the issue of security and health, you don't disclose it without a person giving his consent. Otherwise, I would have advised that some of these sufferers, some of these victims could have been brought outside. Let people see and know. Unfortunately and unfortunately too, nobody has died of COVID-19 in Imo State. So that's why many people are not taking it very serious. I'm not praying that anybody should die. But what we are saying is that it is real. People should avoid this rumor that there is no COVID in Imo State.
The government has scaled up testing to 100 per day, and this, no doubt, will increase the existing figures. The government is still appealing to indigents to stay safe and comply with the precautionary measures put in place to contain the spread of the virus in the state. From Owerri, the Imo State capital, Eyitope Kuteyi, for COVID-19 updates.
Thank you, Tokwe, there. And let's join our Professor Bola Olainka, an epidemiologist who joins us from our Abuja studio. Thank you for joining us, Professor.
Yeah, good evening.
Good evening. From what you've heard from our correspondents there, the reports that are out there is that nobody, a lot of people are, they picked up the skepticism that they had earlier when the news first broke about the case of COVID-19 in Nigeria. That skepticism appears to be returning. People are casting restraint to the wind. Why do you think this is so?
Well, I think it's because when COVID started in China and in other parts of the world, people had a picture in their mind of what a person who tests positive for COVID looks like. But then somehow in our country, people are not looking like that. If you look at our statistics, we have just about 2% of people suffering from the severe form of the disease, and we have more people having the mild and moderate form of the disease. So somehow the clinical picture doesn't fit in with what people had seen. But I still think it is wrong for people to say until they see someone, they won't believe it. When we had Ebola in Nigeria, we only had 20 cases, but people believed we had Ebola, and I'm not sure if they really saw any of the cases face to face. I actually think people need to face the reality and know that, yes, we have COVID. Our presentation in the country may be similar to malaria for most people, but COVID is a reality. And I'm not sure what the basis for skepticism is, because I know that media has tried in various ways to tell people that this is real. They've gone to the treatment centers. People who have recovered from the disease have said this. We just need to find a way to educate our people and say, look, we have COVID. Yes, people may not be falling down on the street and gasping for breath, but we still have a disease that could be mild in some people, but then in other people, it could be severe and it could lead to death. And that is why we need to work hard in controlling that disease.
I know that in the course of the program today, we're going to be speaking with an emotional intelligence consultant. But let me bring this to you. My colleague talked about some of the things the respondents were mentioning, things like, how come we don't hear the names of these people that have been infected by the coronavirus, and there's no one that has said this location or this is where those that have been infected are living, so don't go around there. Do you think those kind of things would make any difference to the thinking of those who are skeptic?
I kind of think that people's memories are short, because we actually have names of governors in Nigeria, names of governors who actually came out to say, look, I tested positive for the virus. So there are names that can be mentioned of people who tested positive for the virus in Nigeria. And that's why I think that for people to say, I don't know anyone, it's not really true, because there are people that are known. And apart from coronavirus, you don't know the name of everybody that has every type of disease, but there are people who have come out, they've told you their names, you have an idea of where they live. if you look at the NCDC data every day, it tells you the states where this is happening. So, and even if you look at the state data from the state EOC, it tells you the local governments where this is happening. So in a way, I really don't think that is true. Maybe because in the particular street that people live, they do not know someone. And then in that way, they say, oh, I know nobody. But we have over 12,000 cases, and that is a good number of people who are testing positive for the disease.
So we'll take a moment and come back to continue the conversation here. Please do stay with us. Thank you for staying with us. This is our special program, COVID-19 update. And we still have Professor Bola Olayinka, an epidemiologist who joined us from our Abuja studio. Thank you, Prof, for staying with us. But while we went on that break, we were joined by a psychologist and the head of faculty at the Purple Training Institute, Mr. Kuro Ngobo. Mr. Ngobo, thank you for joining us. Okay, so you are a psychologist. Before we went on break, we were talking about the level of skepticism amongst Nigerians who are saying things like there is just numbers that the government continues to spew out. They're not telling us names, or we're not finding out locations where these people are. Do you think that would make any difference to the compliance level? Mr. Ngabo, are you there? Okay, Mr. Ngabo, we'll come back to you. Let me come back to you, Professor Olayinka. Professor Olayinka, when we were talking earlier, we talked about the need for people to understand that you don't really need to know anyone for you to begin to be a little bit more careful about how you move around. But then my colleague mentioned something like the trust factor. The fact that for a long time, the citizens have hardly trusted the government officials. Do you think that might have played a major role in the level of skepticism now?
Well, it's difficult for me to agree to the fact that people don't have trust in government. And that's because the government we have is the government we have. It's the government we had during Ebola. It's the government we've had during Lassa. It's the government we've had during meningitis and cholera. These are similar outbreaks that we have across the country year in, year out. And this is the same government that has worked to control those outbreaks. So I'm not really sure whether it is a mistrust of government. I know people may be a bit upset because of maybe the palliatives didn't reach some people, reach some set of people, and that could be upsetting them. But it's difficult for me to really agree that people do not trust government.
That we have Mr. Ngobo back now. Mr. Ngobo, let's look at the psychology of Nigerians. Nigeria is blessed with immense human resources and all levels of thinkings there. But what do you think is the psychology of the Nigerian that would cause them not to abide by the guidelines that have been set forth to ensure that the spread of the coronavirus is minimized?
Thank you for having me. As far as psychology is concerned, the study of human behavior is tied to a lot of things, and decisions are made based on experiences we've had So I would like to toe the line, or rather not toe the line, that trust deficit is not an issue. It is. The circumstances today and the experiences in the past would, to a large extent, influence that. The other thing also is, let's think about it. What's the culture of a regular Nigerian? What do we regularly do? How would we describe a Nigerian? We celebrate things in loud ways. We believe that poison and some kind of things don't kill an African man. We don't take sanitation and hygiene as very serious things. I'm just speaking generally in terms of culture. And those things only speak to the fact that it will be difficult for people to accept that there is a disease like corona that's killing people. And I agree with Professor, or the person who spoke before Professor spoke, who mentioned people not seeing people who have caught the disease, or people not being aware. In other climes, I understand the bills about privacy and the rest, but in other climes, people see people in hospitals, people see people being carried in ambulances, people see people, and seeing is believing for us today, especially because so many things make us see things that are not as they are. So if communication was different, maybe that would have helped the psyche of a regular Nigerian. But as far as things are concerned, everyone is concerned today, the facts and what we hear as news is not enough to make people believe truly that there's COVID-19. That doesn't change the fact that
Let me bring this here. We've had different kinds of people come on our various platforms to talk about how they went through the process, or what they went through and how they recovered, and they talked about their experiences. Yesterday we had a lawyer on this particular segment of the show who talked about what he went through. We've had a former commissioner for sports talk to us about what he went through and what he saw. We've also had a former special advisor to the president, talk about what he went through, and now he's a changed person. He says, in his words, the person you used to know is dead. This is a new person, that God brought him out of that. So if we have this kind of people telling us the things they've gone through, what else do we need to help people understand that this situation is real and it doesn't have to get to where you are?
I know the Commissioner of Sports personally, and I watch your program, so I've seen those people. And I understand those things. But there's something we seem to be missing out. There's a hierarchy of need by Abraham Maslow that talks about the basic needs people have. When you don't scale one level of need, in this case, food, shelter, water, those basic things, everything else at every other level is secondary to you. So where the Nigerian is thinking about what to eat and has to do face-to-face contact to make a daily living, and has to go, in fact, activity is based on how they go out and all of that. If everything else we say to anybody is secondary, when the human being is worried about those basic needs, and that's a major factor here. No matter how well we push, in itself is still somewhat elitist. That's something else to look at. For the person on the street who can see that have COVID-19, seem to be people who can cater for their own health needs on their own. So let's take
Okay, Professor Lainka, as we wind down this bit here, tell us what should we be doing now to ensure that everyone stays safe?
The first thing is we need to find a way to educate our community. And we need to find a way to engage them and also to empower them, such that even with the disease and with moving around for the purpose of livelihood, each person can still be responsible enough to protect the other person. At the end of the day, it's going to be individual responsibility. I being responsible for myself and for my neighbor. And what does that mean? It means that I protect myself and I also protect my neighbor, even if I'm going about doing my livelihood. That's the way I think we can move forward. So we educate the community, we engage them, and we empower them. We empower them in such a way that, yes, you can still go around to do your livelihood, but you do it with a sense of responsibility, a sense of responsibility for yourself and for your neighbor. If I, for example, need to keep a distance, I keep the distance to protect myself and also to protect my neighbor. If the government has said I should wear a mask, I wear it to protect myself and protect my neighbor. If we talk about the culture of hand hygiene and hand washing, it's all a sense of responsibility. I think in engaging the community, probably we need to go towards that line, that yes, you go about your livelihood, but you do it with a sense of responsibility to protect your neighbor and protect yourself.
Thank you very much. Professor Bola Olainka, an epidemiologist, joined us from our Abuja studio. Thank you for sharing your thoughts today.
Thank you.
Let's go on to Borno State, where our correspondent Blessing Tuno brings us up to speed on what's going on there. Blessing? Hello there, Blessing.
Good evening, and thank you for having me.
Okay, Blessing, what's going on in Borno State at this point? We do understand we're looking at the issue of compliance to the guidelines. Is the situation better in that area?
Well, it's now better in Maiduguri. You know, people no longer wear face masks. People do not comply to the guidelines, you know, the safety guidelines for COVID-19. We have people going around without wearing face masks. You see people sitting in clusters, you know, without observing the social distancing protocol. and it's almost as if nothing is going on. Like life has returned to normal, but then there are still a very few persons that try to observe those protocols, and even in places where you find hand washing points, sometimes you see the containers are empty, there's no water in it, except for maybe banks or the hospitals where you are not allowed to go in without wearing a face mask, and then you see hand sanitizers everywhere. But then, these are places where the population is controlled, but places with larger, population like the markets and other public places, it's almost as if, there's no pandemic going on. That's the situation right now in Maiduguri.
But Maiduguri has a peculiar situation, especially as it concerns security. One would think that the fact that that is on one hand, and then this matter of health concerns would help everyone be a little bit more circumspect. What's happening in terms of what efforts is the government making to ensure that everybody gets back in place?
Well, what's going on right now is, we've seen other states where the government has tried to enforce, compliance, through fines and other measures. But here, what the government is doing is, simply advocacy through opinion leaders, the religious and traditional institutions. Because, to be honest, the people have been through a lot because of, the security issues like you mentioned. People have lost livelihood, people have lost their home. So it's really hard, enforcing some of those things the hard way, But then, as it is, we know that there was a time people were saying they couldn't afford face masks, they couldn't, afford to stay at home during the lockdown, and there were a lot of concerns. But now, we've seen where a lot of organizations and even the government has provided, face masks free of charge. But the thing is, it's not clear why people do not like wearing the face masks. And then, the clusters, it's a tradition that, people usually sit in clusters, to discuss, and to spend time, that way. So it's really hard, enforcing it. But then the government is engaging in advocacy. We have a lot of radio jingles, in local languages, trying to educate people on the reasons they should, obey the protocols given to them. So that's what's going on right now. But then the government is not taking any, forceful measure to ensure compliance.
Thank you very much, our correspondent Blessing Tuna, who is in Borno State. Thank you there. Now, let's look at what's happening in the NCDC. They recorded 315 new confirmed cases on the 8th of June, and 7 deaths were recorded in Nigeria, bringing the total confirmed cases to 12,801, with over 4,040 cases discharged and 361 deaths recorded in 35 states and the Federal Capital Territory. Of the top 5 states with COVID-19, Lagos has recorded 72 deaths, Kano 49, the FCT 23, Edo 24, and Katsina 21. The top 5 states have also seen a high number of recoveries. A breakdown by regions shows Lagos in the southwest with the highest positive cases in the country, with a total of 5,895 cases, followed by Kano in the northwest with 1,004 cases. The Federal Capital Territory leads in the north central with 986 cases. Edo leads in the south-south, 429 cases. Borno retains its 356 cases, but comes top in the northeast, while Ebonyi still leads in the southeast with cases unchanged at 103. And from tomorrow, June the 10th, which is a Wednesday, the internal checkpoints that had been set up by the authorities to curb the spread of the coronavirus within the state would no longer exist. And that's because the governor, Abubakar Bello, has relaxed the lockdown in the state. Our correspondent, Emperor Simon, brings us up to date from Niger State. Emperor.
Niger State currently has a total of 46 confirmed cases of COVID-19, but Governor Abubakar Bello says that notwithstanding, the days of lockdown in the state are over. Earlier in the day, while briefing journalists at the government house, the governor says that henceforth, banks, markets and business places are to commence operation, while all internal security checkpoints are to be dismantled.
Henceforth, markets, banks, and other places of business activities should be opened with strict adherence to all safety measures stated above. There shall be no more lockdown days, hence restriction of movement shall be from 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. in the morning. The ban on interstate travels except for movement of agricultural produce, petroleum products, manufactured products and essential services will remain in force.
But what are the reactions of residents in the state to these new guidelines?
With this one, all both rich and poor, they can go out and do their normal businesses without any hindrance on the road.
At the moment, Niger State is still faced with the challenge of testing for COVID-19. But the state government says it will support the Ibrahim Badamasi Babangida University Lapai to commence testing for COVID-19. It also says its effort towards setting up a molecular laboratory at the General Hospital in Mina is ongoing, and that testing for COVID-19 will soon commence. From the government house here in Mina, Niger State, Emperor Simon for COVID-19 update.
Emperor did that report earlier on. I was still not able to reconnect with Mr. Kuro Ngobo, who joined us from the VGC here in Lagos. But let's go over to the United Kingdom, where a consultant in renal and acute medicine and clinical lead at the Northwest Anglia Foundation Trust, Cambridgeshire, Dr. Chris Agbo joins us. He's also the secretary to the Medical Association of Nigerians across Great Britain. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Agbo.
Thank you very much for having me here.
What's the situation, the COVID-19 situation in your neck of the woods?
Well, things seem to be settling down quite well. I think the last week we passed the peak now, so we're going into the recovery phase, and we're having quite a lower number of rates of admissions, and the number of deaths is also reducing on the daily basis. Overall, things seem to be kind of settling down quite nicely. So we're expecting that in the next couple of weeks, things should be returning back to a reasonable level for new normal level of living.
Okay, do you see even as the lockdowns and the restrictions are being eased gradually, do you see the level of compliance to guidelines like social distancing, wearing a face mask? Do you see those measures being complied with?
Yeah, overall, over the last 10 weeks or so, people have been complying judiciously with the guidelines. Of course, there's been some sporadic cases where we have some issues, that especially what happened over the weekend because of the protest. But other than that, people have been complying with most of the government guidelines, and that seems to have been helping quite significantly in managing the situation.
Compare that to the situation in Nigeria. I don't know, I'm sure you were following the conversation here where we had different people talk about the level of compliance in the country and the response of government. Weigh the two sides. What measures do you think could be done? What things do you think could be done differently here?
Well, it's quite, it will require a different level of measures. Firstly, I think there's still need for increased public awareness, because there's still some degree of stigmatization regarding COVID-19 infection in Nigeria. And if that is not taken care of, I think to some extent it's going to affect the level of how much people are accepting the condition as a true situation. So I think public health awareness regarding the reality of COVID-19 is very key. You need to do more on that, because quite a lot of people still feel that COVID-19 is not within their reach, or is not something that is real. So I think the government, and both the federal government, the state and the local government, they should work out a strategy to increase their awareness among the general populace, because once they are fully aware of what is going on, I think it will help every form of measure, even if you are telling them social distancing, hand washing, and they'll be able to appreciate and comply with it more. But if they're feeling that this is not real, as some of the speakers have said earlier on, I think we're still going to have a challenge of trying to make them to comply with the guidelines that's been brought out. So the main thing I think might make a good improvement is just public awareness, making sure that people are fully aware of not just knowing a little about it, but believing that this is real and also knowing that anybody can get it. Yeah.
Dr. Agbo, we'll take a moment. We'll come back to look at how public awareness can help in the face of protests like what happened in the US and in the UK as regards justice for George Floyd. We'll be back in a moment. Please stay with us. Thank you for staying with us. We still have Dr. Agbo, who joined us from, Dr. Chris Agbo, who joined us from the United Kingdom. Dr. Agbo, before we went to that break, I said we're going to talk about the issue of public awareness and the possibility of a second wave in the face of the protests that have been happening in the United States and the UK. You mentioned it over the weekend, protests for justice for George Floyd and others that might have been killed by the authorities unnecessarily. But do you think that might be a risk that should have been looked at critically?
Well, firstly, I want to send my sympathies and thoughts to the family of George Floyd as they go through this period. Definitely, what's happened over the last few days, which has led to worldwide protests, is not something that was planned. And of course, what has happened is that we have had an increased risk of a possibility of a wave of the infection in the next coming week. So this is one of the things that the public are fully aware of what they're meant to be doing. But I think this is an issue that has kind of went beyond what the guideline is, because firstly, people have the right to protest, even though because of the sensitivity of the protest, and at the same time the timing, because at this period is probably not the right time to protest and all that, because of course we know the social distancing and all that is likely not to be adhered with. And of course, if you are a large gathering which is prohibited and all that, but having said that, because of the sensitivity and the injustice that was carried out, people had to come out en masse to fight it, to protest, to actually get their voice heard. What is left us with is that we're going to be expecting a second wave, which it all depends on how things rolls out. But then hopefully in the next week or the next 2 weeks, we should be finding out how much this has impacted in terms of a second wave of the virus coming up in the country.
Thank you very much, Dr. Chris Agbo. He's the Secretary of the Medical Association of Nigerians across Great Britain and also the Renal and Acute Medicine and Clinical Leader at Northwest Anglia Foundation Trust, Cambridgeshire. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you very much.
And from the United Kingdom, we return to Nigeria, straight to Bauchi, where our correspondent Hajara Aliyu brings us an update. Hajara.
Bauchi State has today recorded 70 new cases of COVID-19, the highest daily number since the outbreak of coronavirus in the state. This was confirmed to Channels TV by the Executive Chairman, Primary Healthcare Development Agency, Dr. Rilwanu Muhammad. Now, the state has not been on lockdown for 3 weeks now since it was lifted few days to Salah celebration. The state governor made it clear while easing the restrictions that people must continue to adhere to social distancing guidelines and that the state will produce and distribute massive face masks to the people. And that's the only condition where the use of face masks will be enforced. That promise has not been fulfilled yet. When we went to town earlier, we saw people flouting some of the safety guidelines, and the police has been trying to enforce some of these measures, but there's a public outcry of police harassment, and the Commissioner of Police, Lowell Jimita, has been reacting to this.
The wearing of face masks, especially where I came from, and also in the federal government has said that it's compulsory, especially if you are going into the public. So, and since it is a public health matter, I believe the public itself has that responsibility. I will look into the activities of all these tactical teams and see where I can review and places where we can improve, we'll improve.
Bauchi State Governor Bala Mohammed has also said he has received complaints from people and he has reacted via Twitter. This is what he tweeted. He said, "I have received reports of citizen harassment by men of the Rapid Response Squad tasked with implementing the ban on Okada and enforcement of the use of face masks across the state. This is to reiterate that enforcing the laid down guidelines must not include harassment of any kind." He also added that "I urge all citizens of the state to continue their lawful movements without fear. Also, I have reached out to the security agencies and instructed that even in the process of doing their jobs, the rights of citizens must be respected and not trampled upon at all times." From Bauchi State, Hajara Aliyu for COVID-19 updates.
Now, despite encouraging signs in East Asia and Europe, where economies are slowly opening after months of lockdown, the World Health Organization has warned that the pandemic is far from over as the number of cases globally hit 7 million. More than 6 months into the pandemic, this is not the time for any country to take its foot off the pedal. That's according to the Director General Tedros Ghebreyesus, who told reporters on Monday. More than 135,000 cases were reported on Sunday, he said, making it the worst day for new confirmed infections since the pandemic began. Some 3/4 of the new cases were from 10 countries, including the U.S., which is approaching the 2 million cases mark. Now, 286 people have died from the disease so far. And that's it on COVID-19 update at this hour. Thank you for watching. Visit the NCDC and the WHO websites for updates on the COVID-19 and channelstv.com for more information. Thank you. I'm Neota Igbe.